Welcome, everybody, to this evening's webinar. You know, I like to be proactive, and although we're not breeding mares right now, it's right around the corner. And for some of you, you may never have bred a mare before, or it may not be something that you would do in your program. But as dealers, we need to be prepared for seasons that are coming up, because you may have customers that will come to you and ask, hey, I've got a brood mare. Let's not wait till January or February to get her in the best condition she can be in. We've got time now to do it slowly. Everything that we can do slowly is going to be better, and it's going to last longer. So think of, if you've got clients that have brood mares and you know that they may want to breed them, start talking to them now about preparing that mare for the breeding season. Now, if she's currently pregnant, she's going to foal early in the year, January, February. Then you want to talk to them about that as well, late gestation, but then also what we can be feeding her to have her bounce back really quickly. So ultimately, when we're breeding mares and stallions, the goal is a foal. The goal is to improve the pedigree of the mare and the stallion combined in the offspring. That's our goal. Now, I know we don't always achieve that, but that is the goal every time, and why we keep doing it over and over again, because we want to keep improving that pedigree, that bloodline, improving the characteristics of that offspring. What we need to remember, though, is reproduction is not a given. It is a bonus. The only thing that's a given is trying to stay alive. So if a mare gets too thin and has no nutrients for maintaining her own body weight, then there is absolutely no way that she's ever going to get pregnant, because she is going to put all of her energy into just staying alive, into maintaining some muscle mass or tissue mass. So if she's too thin, she's going to not cycle and not be able to be bred. The reproductive cycle is centered around nutrition and also day length. Now, a lot of people think that it's temperature, because temperature coincides with the changing of the season. We've now gone out of the summer and we're in the fall, and the temperatures are getting colder, and you'll notice your horse is probably growing a little bit more of a hair coat. It's not necessarily the temperature that is triggering that. It's the change in daylight. Um, the eyes actually can receive signals of the amount of daylight hours, and then that transmits a signal to the brain, which then secretes hormone to certain glands, and that then secretes hormones that will cause the mare to cycle or not cycle. So if you had long day length and it got cold, your mare would not go into those that cycle. It's the change in light. And that's why in the springtime, people will put mares under lights to stimulate their breeding season, stimulate them to cycle. But also, you've seen with show horses, it will stimulate them to shed their hair coat. Now, oftentimes, if we're putting lights on in a show barn, we're also keeping it nice and warm. But ultimately, it's the day length, it's the light that is causing them to shed their hair coat, and not necessarily the temperature. So we think about body condition, because I've said over and over, okay, well, body condition is centered around nutrition, and if the horse is too thin, they're not going to breed. So the ideal body condition, if we look at a 1 to 9 scale, 1 being super skinny and 9 being really, really fat, morbidly obese, we say in the middle there, that 5 or 6 is ideal. And I know these are just cartoons of horses, but nice even coverage. I can't palpate or feel big fat pads anywhere, and I don't see any ribs visibly, but I don't have to press really hard to find the ribs. So a 5 or a 6, they'll cycle earlier. They'll also have decreased amount of services to get the mare pregnant. And that also increased numbers of pregnancies if we can keep her in an ideal body condition. So if I say it takes 60 days to put one body condition score on a horse. You've got a mare that's a body condition score of 4. Let's say she's a thoroughbred that you got off the track and she's in racing fitness condition, but we want her to let down and put some weight on before we breed her. 60 days is what it's going to take. We just started November. So November and December for me to get one body condition score on her, which works out to be about 50 pounds. So right now is the ideal time for us to really be thinking about the breeding season and increasing or decreasing her body weight. If the mare is too thin, I mean, it should say 1 to 4 there, but really 1, there's nothing happening. She's just barely staying alive. But 2 to 4, you can visibly see the ribs in these horses, right? They will have longer interovulatory periods. So that means between ovulations, the time it takes for her to make that corpus luteum, so she ovulates in that spot where the egg was housed, that follicle that ruptured, then the egg came out. That then turns into a corpus luteum. That corpus luteum will secrete progesterone, which is supposed to help maintain that pregnancy. If she doesn't get pregnant, that corpus luteum will regress, and then we'll start the whole thing over again. We'll develop follicles. One will become the dominant follicle. It will rupture, and we go all over again. So between ovulations is longer if we have a mare that's too thin. Decreased ovarian activity. So we have small follicles developing, but what we see is a lot of times these mares will not develop that dominant follicle that has to rupture and release an egg. So we get a lot of small follicles and just doesn't do anything. That then leads us to decreased conception rates, decreased pregnancy maintenance as well, because we know that that CL is not very active at producing progesterone. So we would have to use artificial progesterone or injections. If she's maintaining or losing weight, that is a problem. If we have this mare that's thin and we have her on an increasing plane of nutrition, that's better. But ideally, what we want to do is we want to start now or at least 60 days prior to when you want to breed her and be putting some weight on her. A fat horse. Anything 7 to 9, really. I left 1 and 9 off because I think that they're just the complete outliers. But 7 or 8 is more what we would see in our equine population. So a body constitution score of 7 or 8 is considered overweight. Greater than 8 is considered really morbidly obese. Again, with these horses, you can see there's a much more fat coverage. You might even start to see fat pads. If it's a horse that has a tendency towards metabolic issues, they might start to see a crusty neck, fat over the tail heads, maybe fat right where you do the wither up, very flat back. These animals are going to also find it a little bit more difficult to get pregnant. So if we have that body condition score of 8 or 9, I mean, a 7 you might get away with it, but 8 or 9, we definitely know that that fat will interfere with hormonal signaling, impaired cycles. So I discussed earlier how we have all those little follicles and then one becomes a dominant follicle and it ruptures and the egg is released and then the corpus luteum secretes progesterone. What research has shown is that in fat mares, the corpus luteum doesn't go away. So again, we have this really long, drawn out estrous cycle that never goes anywhere. You know that overweight horses have increased incidence of laminitis, impaired oocyte or egg quality. Okay, from the very beginning, we're behind the 8 ball. We've got impaired oocyte quality with fat mares, and we do not want that. Reduced fetal growth because there's literally no space for them, and you're increasing their predisposition to disease later on in life. We've seen research in people, children that in utero and the mother is obese, those children had a higher incidence of developing diseases at puberty than children that were in utero in average size women. So the pregnant mare, we're looking at early gestation, less than 6 months, similar requirements to maintenance. right? Minerals crucial for early embryonic development, increased body condition if needed. Light exercise if she's too fat, and don't overfeed her. But I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is, well, she looks fine, so I don't really need to feed her anything different. I'm feeding her hay and some oats, or a pound of a sweet feed, and she looks great, so that's all I'm going to do. We know that early embryonic development is really critical, so minerals are crucial. She doesn't need a lot of extra protein and calories, but minerals are absolutely critical. We also know that those minerals are also critical for fertility. So if we think about vitamin E, selenium, vitamin A, these are all absolutely critical for um, fertility in mares. And that's the difference between the dark orange and the dark Breeder's Choice Plus. So the Breeder's Choice Plus has slightly more selenium and vitamin A. So we recommend that that product be fed to mares that have a little tougher time getting pregnant. If your mares get pregnant easy as, and you got the rest of your barn on dark orange, then you can keep them all on that. But the Breeder's Choice Plus was specifically developed for the broodmare and stallion. Mid-gestation, the 7th to 8th month, increase in energy and protein, increase in calcium and phosphorus. The source of calcium is really important. At this point, we are now utilizing the marine-derived calcium. So it looks like honeycomb under a microscope. It's what's in all of our gut health supplements, but it's also really, really bioavailable and can increase bone density. So that's really a plus. Also, we know that foals are born with no immune system. And so how can we feed the mare to improve the immune status of her and any offspring that she may have? And research has shown that your chelated minerals, which is all DAC minerals except the direct action, are 100% chelated minerals. And those chelated minerals are more bioavailable. They boost the mare's immune system, and she puts that added immune strength into her foal. It directly passes the placental barrier and improves immune status in the foals. Research showed that mares fed chelated minerals versus those inorganic rock-type minerals. Those foals, when they were born, had higher immune function. Also, mannan oligosaccharides, or MOS, which is a prebiotic that we have in our DDA, we have in our Rescue Aid. That product, that ingredient, also improves the immune function. So while your mare should be on a basic vitamin and mineral supplement, they should also be on something like the DAC digestive feed additive, because that's going to improve gut health, improve immune function, and that immune function boost is going to be passed through to the foal. These are all things that we also want to have these mares adjusted to before they get pregnant. Late gestation, 9, 10, 11 months, we're really just increasing energy and protein requirements at this point. That they're laying down a lot of tissue and fat on that foal. It's developing large, its size at that point, but all of the structure and foundation is already there, right? Where all the critical organs, heart, lungs, liver, they're already there. And in that last trimester, really all we're doing is laying down tissue and fat. The other thing that the mare is doing is she's fortifying the fetal liver with trace minerals. So this time of gestation, if we've got a pregnant mare and she's going to foal in January, February, then what she's doing at this point is any nutrients that she consumes, she's using whatever she needs, but then extra she's going to put into that fetal liver, because the mare's milk is not high in minerals. We also know for the first 3 months of life, the foal is picking and grazing and learning to eat food, but he is predominantly drinking mare's milk. So if mare's milk isn't high in minerals and the foal isn't eating their own food, where are they getting minerals from? During that last trimester in utero, the mare is putting extra trace minerals into that foal's liver, so that once it's born, it can draw on those stores. So it's absolutely critical that we continue a really aggressive, strong vitamin and mineral program in that late gestation mare so that we're giving that foal the best chance it can get, a best start to life. You can see here the protein and energy requirements pretty much go hand in hand. And for the first, say, 7 months, they're relatively low. But then when we go 8 to 11 months, they start to significantly increase both protein and energy requirements. And it's just we're laying down more tissue and fat. Oops. Let me see if I can fix this. So we can see it better. Everybody's still there. We'll cut that out of the recording. What we see in the lactating mare, though, is early lactation through that's first 3 months is the protein and energy requirements are the highest, and then after 3 months they start to drop down because we're assuming by 3 months of age that foal is really starting to wean itself off mare's milk and eat its own food, whether that be grass, hay, or whatever concentrate that you're giving them, that the fetal stores of those micronutrients are depleted, and so that's when they're starting to eat their own food and absorb those out of their own diet. One thing that I also recommend for brood mares in gestation and in early lactation is chromium. Chromium, especially for a brood mare, is going to help unlock more energy out of the food you're feeding her so that she can increase her ability to produce milk. Right? It'll increase her ability to lactate and maintain body weight. We all know that there are some mares that put all of their energy into the foal, lose weight. The foal's great, huge. She's got a boatload of milk, but she looks terrible because she's lost a bunch of weight. And it doesn't seem like any amount of feed will fix that. So chromium can help unlock more nutrients so that she's got enough for herself and the foal. Or if you have a mare that doesn't secrete a lot of milk, doesn't make a lot of milk, the chromium's great. The chromium, if we can feed chromium through gestation as well, we know that that is going to help boost immune function in that foal. So there's lots of different things that we're adding to the diet that are going to help boost immune function, maintain body weight, and build a strong foal. Right now, your options for chromium are in the racing formula, so probably not the vitamin and mineral product that you're going to be using for these brood mares, and the DAC metabolic. The other thing that I think a lot of people forget about is exercise. We don't typically exercise brood mares, but what we've seen in people is that increased exercise in pregnant women actually increased fetal lung development and decreased fetal heart rate. So less stress on that foal's heart. That is, I think, exceptionally important if you're breeding horses specifically for um, exercise, for let's say barrel racing or anything done at speed, to have increased lung development and increased heart development, that is phenomenal. So increased cardiovascular function. And it doesn't mean that you're out there doing intense exercise. It maybe means that you're, riding or she's doing light buggy work, trail riding. So exercise in a broodmare is not a bad thing. Just like in people, though, whatever you have been, you need to make sure that you introduce your exercise program before she gets pregnant. If you doing exercise with her is not an option, then there are other options, like you can put the water in one part of the stall, you can in one part of the paddock, you can put the hay in another part of the paddock, you can put the kind of mineral block in another part of the paddock, and you can kind of make her exercise that way. Put your brood mares in a hilly paddock, those kinds of things. So ovarian function in those non-pregnant mares. I know we keep kind of jumping between pregnant, not pregnant. early gestation. But in these non-pregnant mares, the thing that we need to boost is fertility, and that is by boosting ovarian function. And we know that glucose and insulin play a huge role in ovarian function, and we want to make sure that they stay balanced though, and we don't have a horse with metabolic issues, because their impaired glucose and insulin transport will affect their fertility. We know in women that suffer from insulin resistance that polycystic ovarian syndrome is very high in those women. We know that poor insulin function has shown cystic ovarian disease in cattle. So there are a lot of negatives from having those mares overweight. I mentioned earlier about thin and fat mares. We know that insulin resistant mares, or mares that have the equine metabolic syndrome, maybe she's got a crusty neck, they have lots of small and medium follicles, but they never actually develop into anything. I show this because if you've ever heard me talk about broodmares before and feeding the foal, the most important time to feed the foal is in utero. That is when you have the most flexibility, where you can do the most harm and you can do the most good to that fetus, which then will develop into, a foal. Once the foal is born, you kind of got the cards that you've been dealt. Now, you may be able to play the cards in different ways, but that is the hand you've been dealt. When the foal is in utero, you are choosing your cards. You're putting your deck together. I don't know why I'm using all of these card references tonight, but it made sense in my head. So we want to make sure that we are setting that fetus up for a lifetime of success, and that is by feeding the mare correctly. We know that intrauterine environment, it's so impactful on fetal development, and factors in the mare, maternal nutrition, obesity, lack of exercise, can really affect fetal development. This study in horses, I think, is an amazing example of what that in utero environment can do to a foal. So here we've had you have a pony and a pony, and you cross those, and if you just AI those, and you have, then the offspring is a pony crossed with a pony, right? But let's say we take that embryo from the pony-pony cross and we put it into a draft mare. So you put that pony embryo into a draft mare, or you have a saddlebred cross with a saddlebred, and you can embryo transfer, take that embryo and put it into a pony mare. So you have a saddlebred embryo that you put into a pony. You have a saddlebred embryo in a saddlebred mare, or you take a saddlebred embryo and you put it into a draft horse. And look, the pictures on the screen actually show you what happened. The pony embryo in the draft mare, the offspring is larger. The saddlebred embryo in a pony is smaller than the saddlebred in a saddlebred, and the saddlebred put into a draft is the largest. The other very interesting research from the pony work was that if you take a pony embryo and you put it into a thoroughbred, that, or you take a thoroughbred embryo and you put it into a pony, ponies, we know, are susceptible to laminitis and metabolic issues. And that all stems from interfering with glucose and insulin regulation. And so the pony embryo in a thoroughbred mare comes out fine. The pony in the pony has typical, stereotypical kind of pony, higher incidence for laminitis and crusty neck. Glucose and insulin are impaired. You take the thoroughbred embryo and you put it into a pony. Now, thoroughbreds aren't at risk typically of having laminitis and metabolic issues and impaired glucose and insulin function. But when you put that thoroughbred embryo into a pony's uterus, placenta, that environment that embryo grows in then, where ponies are typically have impaired glucose and insulin, that foal 9 times out of 10 has impaired glucose and insulin. So it's really demonstrating that the environment that that embryo is growing in is absolutely critical. So what you feed the mare is absolutely critical, but also if you do any kind of embryo transfer into reset mares, make sure you're always picking like for like, and that the reset mare, the selection of those mares is really, really important, that she's not just a vessel, she can actually have a lot of impact over the outcome of that foal. So I didn't put all of the actual DAC products. We can talk about those now, but what I wanted to go through are the actual ingredients that we want to be seeing on the ingredients list. So number one, we've talked about chromium. It helps to mediate that negative glucose and insulin, because we also know that during the estrus cycle, mares will naturally decrease their ability to deal with sugars and starches. So if you couple that with she's already obese, it's really a perfect storm. So if you have a mare that's a little bit overweight and you're a little concerned and you've restricted her diet, but you don't want to restrict it too much that she's losing weight, because then that would preclude her from getting pregnant. You aren't able to do any exercise, then making sure that you have her on a product that's got chromium in it is going to help regulate glucose and insulin, but also stabilize that uterine environment, setting the stage for the foal. It'll help her with fertility. Remember, if we're unlocking more nutrients, more glucose, then we can feed all of the kind of pathways in the horse, the immune system, muscle recovery, feed all those things, and then still have energy left over for what we want, which is pregnancy. Natural vitamin E. Natural vitamin E is an powerful antioxidant, right? And pregnancy causes stress in the body. You're growing a foreign body, so we want to decrease all the stress, all the oxidative stress that we can. So natural vitamin E can be really important. Chelated minerals versus your inorganic minerals. We know that increases immune function in both the mare and the foal, increases uptake in the fetal liver. So only chelated minerals, really important. That calcite, that marine-derived calcium, increases bone density. We can start that in utero. So not only do we want to be feeding it to the foal once it's born, but we also want to make sure that the mare is getting that. Organic selenium is by far superior to inorganic selenium, couples with vitamin E as a powerful antioxidant that can decrease pregnancy-associated stress, but also increase fertility rates. Yeast and the ingredients in our probiotics, our DAC digestive feed additive, they are going to keep the hindgut microbiome healthy. Again, 70% of your immune system stems from the gut. That is also going to be passing through. We know that research has definitely shown that hindgut microbiome, a good healthy microbiome, passes through to the offspring. And then things like super fibers. We've got some prebiotic fibers in those supplements as well, or prebiotics like the outer cell wall of the yeast, again, keeping that microbiome healthy. The other thing that we should point out for the pregnant mares, and we'll talk more about pregnant mares in one of the future presentations, but the new GI Pro 3, we talked about the multiple strains of probiotics that are there that are going to be very impactful in killing the strangles, rhodococcus, and clostridia bacteria that cause those particular diseases. So that's really, really important in a broodmare operation as well. So with the products, obviously we know the DAC Breeder's Choice Plus, chelated minerals, the chromium is currently in the DAC Metabolic, the organic selenium is in the Breeder's Choice Plus as well, and then the yeast and the prebiotics and the GI Pro 3 are all in the DDA. So with that, I know it was kind of short tonight, but I'll take any questions.